Hi everyone, welcome to another X-Wing Should I Fly It video. So today I'm going to be talking about the First Ship Rebel build. It's so named because the old archetype for Rebels was 4-ship Rebels. At Biggs Walks the Dogs was a 4-ship Rebel list. It was one of the very early takes on the meta, and obviously First Ship Rebels because people think it's broken as shit and it's therefore not fair. That's where the name comes from. I'm a bit disappointed, but I need to explain it for some people, but there you go. And this is my basic take on the list. There's a few different components to it. There's a few different variations, but this is my take. The core components are these 4 pilots. So it is Biggs Darklighter, Lowhhrick, Captain Rex, and then another ship, normally Jess, because of the rerolls you get from flying in that formation. So those are the 4 pilots I've chosen for my take on First Ship Rebels. And then we have R4D6 for Biggs. I like it still. It's a nice card. Obviously, reduce the number of hits coming in, help Biggs live longer. Then integrated Astromech keeps Biggs pretty cheap at 26 points. Then we have Lowhhrick. His ability obviously lets him spend his brace token, which adds more survivability to Biggs. Then Selflessness as his EPT, and that is when a friendly ship at range 1 is hit by an attack, you may discard this card to suffer all of the uncancelled hit results instead of the target ship. Then we have Wookiee Commandos. That keeps him relatively cheap at 30 points. Selflessness, as we'll get into, is really strong on this ship. And obviously Wookiee Commandos gives a decent amount of offensive rerolls, just help nudge him slightly because you're not going to have any other modifiers. Then the big change for the most of the takes I've seen, Captain Rex is normally just left empty at 14 points, but I decided to have a little bit of fun with the 3 points-ish you have left over depending on which droid you take. And I went for Sabine's Masterpiece to give him a crew, and then Tactician, and that just makes Rex doubly annoying, and people are definitely going to want to kill Rex now. If reducing the attacks wasn't enough, having Tactician on there to do stress as well just makes him super annoying and helps with a little bit of control in the later game. You'll find that when you're flying this list, Rex tends to go faster because he cannot do a 1 forwards, so he's the one you're going to end up breaking off and having behind them. And if he can keep them at range 2, keep pumping stress onto them, it kind of helps control the flying as well, which is pretty nice. And then we've got Jess with R2D6, which is the one where you have the EPT, and then draw the fire, and integrated. And this is all designed, obviously, to pull damage off of Biggs or just reduce the amount of damage he can initially take. And the math on this list is crazy. It's really strong if you try and joust it. There's lots of memes going around at the moment about jousting First Ship Rebels and how it is a bad idea. One of the things I wanted to discuss is that it doesn't fly that differently to a Biggs Walks the Dogs. It's actually even more restrictive because you don't have as many same dials. Your TIE fighter's trying to break away because it's going so quickly. Lowhhrick in the Edutech gunship can't turn around. And so you can see his dial over here. It struggles to really turn around. The 180 arc is really strong, but it doesn't help him actually flying in the correct direction. Then Jess has got an awesome dial with a Talon roll, but it does tend to suffer from, if you don't get the approach right and you get outflied, it's really difficult. But basically the plan with this list is keep it together for as long as possible. You're drawing the fire of crits onto Jess's shields. If you're taking a big amount of hits, you can selflessness it. Obviously, if once Biggs is in that danger zone where you don't want to keep using R4D6, selflessness comes in there. Or you can just pull off 2 hits. Other variations of doing this is obviously you could take a different droid on Biggs, do something a little bit more offensive-minded. You could give him the target lock to give somebody else a reroll, that kind of thing. Or you can even unlock the enemy and make them reroll attacks when they're attacking you. There's loads of weird and wonderful ways of building this. Another one I like the idea of is you basically put everything into Lowhhrick, where he has Jin and Jan. So you have the focus stacking and turn one of them into evade, put it all on bigs. Then you need experimental interface to trigger off of his brace action that lets him get all the focus tokens onto bigs. And it does end up a lot more expensive, and it cuts down the other upgrades you can have. But that's a good fun way of doing it as well. The main thing to consider with this list is actually your approach, because you're desperate to joust with this list. If you can, it's going to really just destroy people. If you start having to chase something, a really good video that's around at the moment was Aaron Utley's Steely TV coverage, where Ron's playing First Ship Rebels, and one of the Howards, I want to say Duncan, is playing with Imperial Aces Palpatine, and it's quick draw and Omega Leader, and he does some really good flying baits, run in, and then swoops around. And it does involve some dice rolling, but that's the way you've got to play against this list. You cannot joust it. You've got to try and control the way it's going to fly with your asteroid setup and go from there. Hi everyone, we're back here with a basic deployment. I've gone for the kind of asteroid placement I would be aiming for under this setup. I want to keep it relatively wide, nice open channels, and this is what you obviously want to avoid. If I was playing against it, I want to make sure I've got these rocks out here hugging the edge. But if I'm playing as this list, I want them around about here. Something that should be good. That should still work. See if I've ruined it all now. And then what we're looking at here is assuming that we have a lowest pilot skill, which is a relatively safe assumption. You give your opponent the option of deploying here, or looking at coming straight in behind you, because they're going to assume that you're going to be heading this way, or they can come in here. If they're playing aces, they might be willing to look at coming through the asteroid field, but we'll wait and see. But we're going to go with one or two assumptions first. We'll assume that we set up here and are going to move down this way, occupying this space turn 1, and then somewhere here turn 2. So what we need to do is just go through some simple maneuvers first. So we'll go, wanting to keep formation, so we're going to go with the right bank first. So this is the turn that they're going to be occupying up here. No one bumps, and we've not committed to anything. Then it's basically, we've already forced the joust here. They can either, if they've got hard ones, they can break off this way. But I'd look at a nice aggressive play, and I've lost the moves and do like the banks, probably a 3 right bank. Again, this is a really aggressive move, but it puts you up here, and I believe it should fit if I can judge it properly. If you need to break left, you should be able to fit it around there now. Obviously, this is all, assuming that you can get this kind of setup. But as you can see, covering, let's go back. In fact, if someone's set up here in this corner to joust you, or to try and get in behind, you've not committed to a joust, so if they do break off down this way, you can cover. If they do look like we're going to come further down here, you can do the 2 bank again, put yourself in this space. If I don't think it's going to bump, let's double check. The joys of Vassal, yeah. And this is where everything should be going well here. And there's the kind of approaches you're going to be looking at. But then let's assume they did something else. If they set up down here, this is where you do need to go a little bit slower. So the slowest move you're going to be doing is normally the 2 forwards, just to hold this formation because of Captain Rex. Then you can keep doing that until they commit. The other things you can do is, depending on how much time you want to try and buy for yourself, is you just keep doing these turns. And that does slow the moves down quite a lot. So, where is the next one? Left turn. And you can do this all day long and fly. You just zigzag around. I should really remember these shortcuts by now. And just zigzag either into the field, or you can go back down to your table edge as well. Again, in real life, if you're actually doing this, you need to be very precise with your moves. If you accidentally go a little bit too far forwards, and this turn in particular lands off the table, that's your own fault. But yeah, those are different ways I'd try and slow roll this. There's a few different approaches you can take. Again, that's if they're going down this way. You can try and slow roll your way around the table here. You've got a nice big space here. So that comes down to, if you're playing against this list, does it make any difference if you get the rocks on the corners here and here? So if we kind of reverse this setup somewhat, if we come into it and we've had the rocks cornered on us, I need to come in a little bit more. It does limit slightly. You do need to look at a more aggressive turn now. I'm going to do the 2 right. And this is where it gets a little bit more tricky, because now if they've turned as well, you're going to be chasing each other around the map. Now you've got a 2 forwards here, and that gives you a nice bit of space to play around the table up here now. So it's all about trying to recognise where the space is on the table for you to fly into, and not committing too far forwards, not overcommitting. I did a flight school video on overcommitting a while ago. I do need to revisit all of those flight school videos, but that's the kind of concept we're looking at, and the rough approaches. If I was flying against this list, I would probably not worry too much about cornering the rocks, but try and get more of a weird offset field, and that'll make it much more difficult. And then they do have to just play flying all the way around, and that does give you more chance. If you're flying aces, you do get to cut these corners a lot better, and that's where you're going to get your positional advantage on this list. So one of the things that people have been talking about and trying to do is, obviously, if you're going to fly ordnance against this list to bypass bigs, you do need to make sure you target the ship with Selflessness first. Normally it's going to be a Lowhhrick because he's got the most HP to actually soak those shots up. But normally, if you can get that off and it's a good alpha strike, you can make it dicey. I don't think that it's worth committing to a joust to get that, because if you do get slightly variations on roll, like if you roll a crit and hits and then it gets pulled away, like one of the crits is gone and you're torpedoed down, and it does start to really suffer, especially once the alpha's gone. So I would be more concerned with positional play rather than getting the early alpha strike in. I think you're better off saving those shots. There's one thing this list doesn't do is a massive amount of alpha. It's got consistent damage because it does have Biggs and Jess with modified shots near enough all of the time. Lowhhrick has got semi-modifiers, and Rex is just going to be a pain, especially in this version with Tactician. But it's not like flying against Jump Masters. It's not going to punch you in the face. So try and get those positions. Worry more about getting behind it rather than trying to come in. And don't let Lowhhrick's arc scare you just because it is 180. If you do get the flank, it's only going to be him shooting at you. And those are different things I think you can consider when flying against this list. It is strong. The math is massively in its favour if you do joist it. And that's about it. So let me know if you enjoyed the video. So there's a bit more editing and a bit more work gone into this one. If you prefer this style, let me know. And make sure you like the video, leave some comments, let me know your thoughts of flying this. If you've got a better First Ship Rebel build, let me know. And subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching, everyone.